Hello there. Welcome to OLC 4.0. This is term 1A, not 1B. I'm not sure why it says that. Sorry. We're on class number 5. There are 34 classes total. Today we're working on assignments number 6 and number 7, and we're going to be talking about the types of sentences that exist. I am Jillian Percy. If you need anything related to this course, please call me. Here is all the different ways to contact us. The most important one is if you're handing in classwork, please email your assignments to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. You don't want to send it to, somebody tried to say the NNEC schools. There is no student work NNEC schools, okay? It's got to be the .on.ca one. Make sure that you have your full name, the course name, the assignment number and name on every assignment you hand in. Also label if it's the rough draft or a good draft of a writing assignment. If you're trying to talk to me while I'm in the studio, like you want to ask about a question about what we're talking about today, 1-800-465-7144. You can also join us on Zoom at nnec-on-ca.zoom.us/j/924-617-3555. Sometimes people want to fax us the work, 1-800-463-7852. You can also email me. There's two different emails. Got jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. You can also send it to jillian.percy@nnec.on.ca. Either one works. If you are trying to reach out to me, you can also use Facebook. Capital G, capital P, E-R-C-Y, space, capital W, A-H-S-A. My YouTube is the exact same address. So if you miss a Zoom class, either because of your work schedule or you just kind of logged in at the wrong time, don't worry about it. Just go to the YouTube, and all the recorded classes from this term and from last year are stored there for viewing. The last year part is important too, because you may get ahead of us. Some people work really quickly, and maybe you're already on like assignment, 15 or something. That's fine. Go back, take a look at term 2B and look for assignment 15 in the classes, and you'll be able to see how to do it, okay? There are a few small changes between last year's and this year's. It doesn't affect everything. And if you hand in one from the older version, that's fine. I still mark it. I don't worry about that. I tried to make things a little more understandable. So I think the new version's better. If you haven't got it, by all means, reach out to me. I'd be happy to send it to you. If you're not wanting to talk while I'm on air, because not everybody wants to have everybody in the universe hear them, that's fine. Call the office, 1-800-667-3703, and my extension is 2211. We are right now in term 1A, and during this term, my office hours are Monday to Thursday, 8:30 to 11:30. Then I have a lunch break, 1:30 to 4:30. I'm in class from 2 o'clock to 2:50 though. On Friday, there's no class, and my office hours are 8:30 to 12, lunch break, and then 1 o'clock to 3:30. Office hours change from term to term. So if you're trying to reach me and it's past October 1st, my office hours might have changed. Always check the office and ask them, and they'll be able to tell you what it is. If you need to take a photograph of an assignment, which comes up a few times, there's a few times where you need a picture or a drawing. Take a picture of it and then send it as an attachment. Don't just send it directly as an email. It's very hard for us to print off, and it really doesn't show properly on the computer what it is. Also, in your subject line, let us know what it is, like OLC 40 course, assignment number 7, question number whatever, and then your full name, okay? So we know where you are and where you're coming from. Oh, also community, right? We always need to know the community as well, okay? Learning goals. So our learning goals for today, by the end of today's lessons and doing the assignments, here is what we should be able to do, right? Understand the 4 main different types of sentences and how to punctuate them. Understand and use different reading strategies before you read. Understand and practice different ways and times to ask a question. Understand and practice making predictions before we read a book or a new chapter. Understand and practice making connections before and during a text. Use visualizing to demonstrate your understanding of a text. Read, answer details, summarize events, express opinions, and make connections, all related to chapter 1 of our novel, Jimmy Comes Home. Okay? So, as always, I kind of do a little bit of a start with grammar just to kind of make sure we're on the same page. This way, if I write notes about things, then you know what kind of vocabulary I'm using and what I mean. So this is about different types of sentences. There's mainly 4 basic sentence types. We could get more elaborate and we will a little bit, but just to start, there are 4 main sentence types. You're not going to be tested on this, but it's useful to know while you're writing, okay? There are declarative, interrogative, imperative, and exclamatories. Most of these will follow the subject the sentence format we've been talking about, where the subject comes first, and then we have the predicate or the verb, okay? For a declarative or a statement, this is the most common type of sentence. It's the one we use like 80% of the time. And it simply tells you information or it describes something. It might be part of like telling a story. It might give your opinion. And they end with a period. And I made a really big one there, right? And it would be obviously down on the line, not floating in the air. Some examples of a declaratory sentence would be, I like the red car. The train leaves at 1:15 p.m. The tree was covered in red and yellow leaves. Okay, exclamatory sentence. These are ones that express a strong emotion or sometimes like loud volume, and they end with an exclamation point, which is like an upside down I, right? I hate you. Today is the best day ever. The murderer is one of us. I will love you forever. So all of those are expressing strong emotion, and we use the exclamation point to let the reader know, because they can't hear our voice, right? When we have a voice, we don't need that punctuation, but in writing, we do. An imperative sentence. These are commands. They're kind of like when you're bossing somebody around. They can also be used when you're trying to explain how to do something like you're wanting to cook something in the kitchen, mix the batter, crack the egg. You kind of skip the subject for these, okay? These can end with a period or with an exclamation point, depending on the emotion. Obviously, if you're talking about cracking the eggs, you're probably not using an exclamation point. But if you're screaming, get out of here or help, then you might want to have an exclamation point. These, like I said, often start with the verb, and then the subject is assumed to be you, because it's assuming that you're like you're talking. It's kind of like somebody's writing down what somebody's saying. Get out of here. Put the chicken in the oven at 350 degrees Celsius. Turn left at the corner to go to the grocery store. And it's assumed each time that you're talking to you. Could be you singular, could be you plural, but that's how we kind of work with it. All right. Interrogative or question sentences. We'll be talking a lot about these in this first unit, and they are a big part of today. These are sentences that just ask a question, and they use a question mark at the end of it to show that. We will talk more about questions later. A lot of questions start with the basic question words, which are sometimes called the 5 W's and the H. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. Who are you? What are you doing this evening? Where did the money go? When does school end? Why is your brother crying? And in this type of question, the sentence is really still following the format of subject plus a predicate, because these words, the who, what, where, when, why, these are acting as a special type of pronoun. And then there's our verb. Okay? Subject, verb, subject, verb, subject, verb. Okay? So, okay, so we're going to look at these sentences and think about, are they declarative, interrogative, imperative, or exclamatory? So democracy is when you choose a leader through voting. Okay, well, they're not asking a question, they're telling me something. They don't sound like they have strong emotion, it's just a fact. So for that, I would say it's declarative, right? So I'm just going to underline that. I'm scared. Okay, there's an exclamation point. So if it's an exclamation point, it's going to be either imperative or exclamatory. Imperative would be a command. It's not telling you to do something, it's just showing you their emotion. So it is exclamatory. The town meeting will start at 8 o'clock tonight. Declarative, interrogative, imperative, or exclamatory. This is another factual one, right? They're not asking a question, they're not giving a command, they're just telling you some information. And so that is declarative. What day is your race on? Okay, so question mark, that automatically tells you it's an interrogative. That's pretty much 100% of the time. Clean up this mess right now. Okay, so we've got the exclamation point, so it's going to be either exclamatory or imperative. They certainly have strong emotions, but where is the subject? There's no person here. It's that format where they're giving a command. They're telling you what to do. You clean up this mess right now. So that is imperative. So I would underline that. Again, this isn't so much important when you're reading. It becomes important when you're writing to make sure that you use the right type of punctuation, right? And different languages don't always use these exact same punctuation marks. Like in Spanish, they put the the question mark in front. So that's why I'm making sure that we understand this, because they aren't always used in every language, right? Okay, one last type of sentence is called a compound sentence. And a compound sentence is when you join two simple sentences together to form one new larger sentence. Sometimes discussing this can get confusing. So one way we try to make it clearer is to use the word clause for the two smaller sentences. And a clause is just a group of words that contains a subject and a verb. It can sometimes stand alone as a sentence by itself, like in a simple sentence. And then when it does that, it's called an independent clause because it can stand independently as a sentence all by itself. And a compound sentence would have two of those independent clauses joined by the conjunction. This is typically used for declarative sentences. There are, more complex versions where you could use it with the other ones, but 9 times out of 10, this is a declarative sentence, okay? So there are only 7 coordinating conjunctions. There are only 7 words you can use to join those two sentences together and make a compound sentence. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. And that so isn't like, so, like whatever. That's so like because. I'm doing this so you understand how to cook, right? We usually put a comma in front of the coordinating conjunction and right after the first clause or simple sentence. So here's an example. I love to go out dancing, comma, but I also love to stay home reading a book, period. So in yellow, I've got I love to go out dancing. That's my first clause. My second clause is I also love to stay home reading a book. And then I've joined them with the word but. And I'm using but because it's contrast. Here's what I love, but here's a different thing that I also love. Okay, so that's a proper compound sentence. You can see there's a subject, both types on both sides, it's I. And then there's a verb, love, and we also have to go and to stay. Because those are my verbs. All right. Here are some other examples of compound sentences using all the different types of coordinating conjunctions. What I find is a lot of students are used to the one and, but they haven't seen the other ones as much, okay? So I want to go see grandma for this Christmas is her first without grandpa. So in this case, for is talking about the reason. It's giving the reason why I'm doing it. Okay. I love to go to the movies, or I could also go out to dinner. This one, I'm giving you 2 different choices. I do not wish to go skiing, nor do I wish to go skating. This one is negative choices. Like I'm giving you 2 choices and letting you know I actually don't like either of those choices. John played hockey in the winter and he played baseball in the summer. This one is sometimes considered neutral. It just is joining. That's all it's doing. I hoped to go to the concert, but I hadn't saved enough money yet. This one is showing contrast. It's 2 statements that are kind of opposed or opposite to each other. He refused to do his homework, so his parents turned off the internet. This one is like the word for. It's giving the reason. All right. He wanted to ask her out, yet he was afraid she would turn him down. Yet in meaning has a lot It's a lot like the word but, right? It's another one that's showing contrast, right? Okay. Now, I wanted to tackle this because I was marking some stuff today and really noticed this. Here are some examples of sentences that do not count as a compound sentence. Occasionally, I have students get confused and they think that anytime they see one of the coordinating conjunctions, that the sentence is automatically a compound sentence. But that isn't true, okay? Sometimes these conjunctions might be joining up words or phrases instead. It only counts as a compound sentence if it is joining two independent clauses. They have to be able to stand on their own. So if I said, I don't like fishing or hunting, that's not a compound sentence. There's no subject in the word hunting, right? It's just a simple sentence with choices. I would like to go to dinner. Then we could go watch a movie. This is not a compound sentence either because the word then is not considered one of the coordinating conjunctions. It's actually a subordinating conjunction, which we'll talk about later. So this is also not a compound sentence. I have always loved playing broomball, comma, I am very good at it. This is also not a compound sentence because we didn't use a conjunction at all. We just used a comma. This is actually a run-on sentence. If I saw this, you would need to fix it and put a period here or use a conjunction to join it, okay? So those are some examples where it's not a compound sentence, even if it's using those words, for, and, nor, but, all those ones, okay? All right, so let's take a look at these. Have these sentences been joined together correctly? Like, do they count as compound sentences? Or have they been written incorrectly? I can't wait to eat dinner, so I can go to the movie. All right, well, here's my first clause. I can't wait to eat dinner. Here's my second one. I can go to the movie. That's both correct. So is a legitimate conjunction, so this is correctly done. Okay. She loves going shopping, comma. She is excited to pick up new clothes. Is this correct or not correct? Well, here's my first clause. She loves going shopping. Yep. She is excited to pick up new clothes. Yep, that's a good one. But look, there's no coordinating conjunction. So this doesn't count as a compound sentence. In fact, this is a run-on sentence, or what's sometimes called a comma splice error, and it is incorrect. I would need to fix it. He had waited all summer to get on the school football team, for he could barely sleep the night before tryouts. So he had waited all summer to get on the school football team. It's long. Totally, that is a correct clause. He could barely sleep the night before tryouts. That is also a correct clause. There's our subject and there's our actions. But, oh, wait, there's the word for. Okay, so this is correct because I've used one of the coordinating conjunctions. First, we moved to a small town, comma, and later we moved back to the big city. Is this correct or is it not? First, we moved to a small town. Is that a clause? Sure. We is your subject, moved is your verb. Later, we moved back to the big city. We is your subject, moved is your verb. And then we've got a coordinating conjunction in the middle, so that has been joined correctly. I also remembered to use the comma. Sometimes people forget the comma. I am not interested in trying out for football, nor am I interested in playing hockey. So I am not interested in trying out for football. That is a complete clause. Nor is one of the coordinating conjunctions. Nor am I interested in playing hockey. There's a little bit of inversion here, which I'll talk about later. Am I interested in playing hockey? The I is your subject. Am interested is your verb, so that counts. Nor is a conjunction. The only problem here is they forgot to put a comma right after the word football. If it would normally have a period if it was a simple sentence, when you're creating it as part of a compound sentence, take out the period and put a comma there, essentially, okay? So right now, as it stands, this is incorrect, okay? All right, so now we're going to look at reading strategies to use before you begin reading. And they're just kind of a way to get your brain sort of ready to think about stuff before you read. There's a lot of research that shows when we think about stuff before we start reading, it helps us remember and understand what we're reading a lot better. Okay. So today we're going to talk about some of the reading strategies we often use before we read, because some reading strategies only work after you've read. They're not going to work beforehand. Reading strategies, if you're thinking like, what is that? It's basically just a thinking strategy, but it's a way to think about what we read. Some strategies work best before reading, others work great at any time, others really only work at the end. So some of the ones we're going to look at today are asking questions before we read, making connections before we read, and making predictions before we read. Okay? Asking questions. Now, you can ask questions when you're reading at various different times, before we read, during reading, and after we read. Before reading, when you're asking questions, then you're asking some questions about a book before you read it to get your brain working and thinking about how to make sense of what you're about to read. During reading, there's a lot of research that shows looking at the questions you're going to need to answer before you start reading, and then asking them as you're reading can help you remember what you read more effectively. And then after reading, asking or answering questions after you read can help you figure out the most important points or the key details about what you read, right? Sometimes it's only when we look back at the chapter as a whole that we understand it, especially if it's a long chapter where there's a lot of stuff that has gone on. All right. Those are talking about the times we ask questions. Here are three main categories of questions, okay? Directly stated information and texts. In other words, right in the book, you can find the words that will answer that question, like, what is his girlfriend's name? And you'll find it right there in the book. It'll be said. Understanding indirectly stated information and ideas in texts. That's where they haven't come right out and said it, but it is something that they figure you would understand. Like if it says that, Johnny walked in the room, slammed the door, and punched the wall, and it says, how is Johnny feeling? And you're looking for a feeling word. Well, it doesn't tell you what he's feeling, but if you saw somebody slam a door and punch a wall, what feeling would you think they were feeling? Right? So that's indirectly stated. Okay. And then the last kind is making connections. That's where they're asking you to think about your life and your ideas and what you know about the world and other books and connect it to what is going on in the book. So if it said, like, what do you think about what Johnny's going to do next? You would be thinking about, well, what is Johnny like? What are some of the people I know like? What would they do in that situation? What would I do in that situation? So it's causing you to kind of like compare and connect ideas. So most of the reading questions we're going to be asked throughout this entire course, let alone just this assignment, is going to fall in one of the above categories. And the trick is to learn the key words that are going to help you figure out what type of question you're being asked. Once you know what they're trying to ask you, it makes it so much easier to find the answer. Because sometimes people think everything is directly stated and they're looking in the book for the exact word that is in the question and it's not there because that isn't the only kind of question that we can ask. All right. So here are a few of the keywords. There are other ones, but these are some of the keywords. Okay. After a while, you'll come to recognize the type of question being asked. This is just trying to get you started. So directly stated, it'll say find, list, locate, identify, tell. It might ask you one of the question words like what, when, where, and those would be clues that the information is said right in the words of the book or the article you're reading. Indirectly stated means you're going to have to kind of think about it more and put two and two together to kind of figure things out. Making predictions, use your clues, think about, and then making connections. That's where they start inviting you to put a little bit of your opinion, your feelings into the question and into the answer. What do you think about? What do you do if, in your opinion? And the big key there is the you. What do you think? What do you feel? What would you do? It's trying to get you to bring your own experiences to that reading. Okay, I'm gonna kind of, because I feel like I'm running a little bit slow. we talked about this. This is very specific detail-oriented stuff, okay? This is often just making sure that you read the book and got the main facts. Sometimes when we're reading fast, we might skip over important details. When did he get to school? Who does he live with? Where did the little boy go? What happened when the principal called him to the office? Indirectly stated, these are kind of the toughest type of questions because you have to kind of look for clues in what you read. Okay. So we talked about this where if a character talks about how you feel, um, and you see that somebody slammed a door, kicked something, you're kind of guessing that that person feels angry. And then if you were writing about it, you might say, I think in this situation that the character feels angry for several reasons. First, he starts shouting at his mother. Later, he slams the door and walks off. And then finally, he kicks the dog as he walks away. These all seem like the actions of an angry person. So I would explain what I think and I would explain what in the text made me think that. Sometimes they'll talk about give supporting details or give supporting evidence from the text. Those are all clues that you're going to have to kind of like read carefully and think about what you're reading. What do you think caused this action? How do you imagine the character feels about what just happened? Make a prediction about what Betty will do next, based on her actions and statements in the book. In your opinion, what will the character do next? Use clues from the chapter to predict what event happened next. This one I'm just kind of debating about. I'm going to cross that one off. I feel like that's better served um, with the next one with making connections. Now, having said that, all right, I'm just going to kind of underline it as kind of my clue that that might not be a good one. All right, over here, making connections. There's three main ways to make connections from the book or the text to yourself. Things that happen in your own life, your own character, your own feelings, and what you're reading. So, for example, I can relate to how Josh probably feels when Karen turns him down at the dance. I bet he feels embarrassed, even though he starts acting angry, because when I've been turned down, that's how I felt, and I acted angry too, or something like that. Text to text. That's where you look for connections between the text you're reading and another text that might have similar events or themes. Like if you've watched a lot of superhero movies and then you watch a new superhero movie, you're probably going to see a lot of similarities between the two types of movies, right? Here is an example of something you might say that is talking about a text to text connection. Both Maggie and Jennifer are nurses in the middle of a war. Maggie is in the Middle East in modern times, and Jennifer is a nurse in World War One. But they both feel overwhelmed by all the death and despair they see all around them. And then the last type of connection is text to world. This can sometimes be connected to text to self. In this type of text or connection, you're looking for um, events that may have happened in the real world, even if they didn't happen to you. So, for example, if you're reading a book that occurred in the aftermath of a hurricane, well, I've never been in a hurricane, but I've watched the news during Hurricane Katrina, and I saw the reports on the lack of food, clean water, and safe housing. So, when this book talks about those things, that seems very realistic to me. Okay. So, you're using kind of your knowledge there. In your unit, it talks about this. What can I ask myself before reading? What do I already know? I wonder if, what do I need to know? My concern is a lot of these are focused on like factual type things, which is great if you're reading like a science textbook or a history article. But for fiction, you might be asking yourself different questions. Things like what might happen? Who are the characters? Where are they? What genre is this? What problem might happen? What type of conflict might occur? So here's the actual assignment number 6. Before reading, it's worth 10 marks. Before you begin reading Jimmy Comes Home, they want you to take some time to judge the book by its cover. Look at the different features to see what the series might be about and use the following questions. And again, it talks about directly stated information, indirectly stated information, or making a connection. In the original version of this, it asked you to circle one of these. I've just kind of left that off because so many people sort of skipped it. I just decided to take it out. Think about the title and write at least 3 sentences to predict what will happen in the story. We do come back to this prediction later on in the next assignment, so you really do want to make some predictions. Now, sometimes people aren't sure what I mean by a prediction, okay? Predictions are about the future. They don't state information we already know. So, in other words, if the title of the book is Jimmy Comes Home, please don't write me a prediction that states, I predict Jimmy will come home. Well, yeah, right? It's already told us that's happening, so it's not really a prediction, okay? By the same reasoning, we also can't predict things that happened in the past. I predict that Jimmy was away somewhere. Well, yeah, we already know that because it's in the title. It's not a prediction. You have to think about the future. So I'm going to give you an example here. This is a book called Paper Towns. I have not read this book. I have no idea what it's about. Um, I can see on the cover there's a map. It's got a pin stuck into it, and I'm going to make predictions just based on that. Not very much. I don't know. It's just kind of a wild guess in the dark based on what the words in the picture make me think of. I predict that the main character in this book travels or wants to travel to many different places. That's because there's a map there. I also predict that many of the towns may seem better on paper than when they get there in real life. The word paper makes me think of something fragile. So I think maybe the character's pictures of the town may be fragile too and easily torn apart once he or she visits the town in person. Now, I haven't read the book. I don't know if I'm right, but you don't have to be right to make a good prediction. Like, we're not trying to win the lottery here. I just want to know that you can use the words in the pictures to come up with ideas about things that might happen. Okay. So don't fret about being right. Just think about what makes an interesting prediction. You can make a prediction about the main character. I predict that Jimmy, and then tell me what you think he might do. You could make a prediction about other characters. I predict that Jimmy's old friends might. What do you think they might do? You can make a prediction about events that might happen. I predict that Jimmy's school might. I predict that Jimmy's community might. You can also make a prediction about the type of conflict or problems that might happen. I predict that the conflict in the story will be between what kind of people or what kind of problem needs to get solved. Those are all examples of a good prediction, okay? Question number 2 is tricky because it kind of asks a lot of questions at once. And what I find is sometimes people get really focused on one question and they don't answer all the other ones. So I'm going to kind of tackle these questions one by one. First, it asks me, what do you think about the title? And then, does it suggest any connections to your own life? Those are kind of connected, okay? I'm gonna, hang on. The phrase, what do you think about, is a connecting one. They're asking you to make a connection to your life. They're kind of saying it 2 different ways, but it's the same concept. So Jimmy comes home. What makes you think of that? Have you ever come home from somewhere? How did it make you feel? What was it like? What kind of events happened? That kind of idea. Okay. Um, so the title Jimmy Comes Home reminds me of a time when. The title Jimmy Comes Home makes me wonder. The title Jimmy Comes Home makes me think. Those are kind of examples. Um, okay, so sometimes when people are thinking about making connections, they feel like they can only make a connection if that exact same thing has happened to them. But making connections is much bigger than that. It could be a similar event or situation, but maybe you've got a similar personality. Maybe you're both ambitious, or maybe you're both very calm. It might have a similar heritage, culture, religion, gender, age, or sexual orientation. You might have similar communities or regions, landforms, climate, politics. Might have similar friends, family, or romantic relationships. You might have similar strengths or weaknesses, similar interests or activities, similar feelings. These are just kind of giving you some ideas of ways to go. Okay, then the question asks about create 3 questions about the plot. Plot is the events. What are some of the things that happen? Some of the question words might be things like who, when, where, why, how, what, or what happened. Some other question words might be things like do, is, are, will, have. Okay, you can't just write me a question word. You've got to put it in a whole sentence, and you need to relate it to the possible events. Like, what do you think about community members will treat Jimmy? How will people at the school feel to have him back? These kinds of questions. Okay. So my example of this question using the title Paper Towns, I think the title is interesting. It reminds me of the time I went to New York and imagined that it would be very exciting, and instead it was dirty, smelly, and kind of scary. My dreams of New York felt like paper that got ripped up. 3 questions I might have about this novel are, does he travel in real life or is it only in his imagination? What does he learn about life in his travels, real or imagined? Does the main character get what he wants or dreams about? So that's about paper towns. It's not about our book. Okay. So don't copy these. Okay. And then the last one, this one is a little bit tricky. I think a lot of people haven't been asked this kind of question before. Okay. Just asking your opinion about the length of the novel, the organization of the novel, and the level of language or words used. So length is, what do you think? Is it too long? Is it too short? Is it just right? What about the organization? What do you think of the chapter headings or the chapter titles? What do you think about the level of the language? Is it easy, hard, appropriate, interesting, boring? What do you think? Okay. That I'm just asking for like you to finish that sentence basically. All right. So then we would get to the spot where we are going to answer questions while you read. Now, different people do this differently. Some people will actually sit there with the novel in one hand and they've got their unit right there and they're reading and answering questions. Other people will kind of read the questions first and then as they're reading, they'll kind of notice it. Okay. Either one is fine. It does not matter which way you do it as long as it works for you. Okay. So hang on. In the original version of this, they really spread this assignment out over like 4 or 5 pages. And what often happened is people would lose track of the last 2 questions and lose a bunch of marks because of it. I tried to sort of condense them in the newer version, but if you still have the original, be cautious that it runs from page 27 to page 31. So you don't want to leave out the last few questions because you can really lose a good chunk of your marks that way. Okay. Oh, if you see here, oh, it'll say like, what does the writer mean by dot, dot, dot? The dot, dot, dot is called an ellipse, okay? It usually is being used to show that there's words being left out. And in the case of these assignments, it's meant to show that these words are left out and you need to finish them. So if it says, I wonder, dot, 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 they want you to finish that sentence. Don't start a whole new sentence of your own. You want to finish the sentence that's already there. Like, I wonder why Jimmy doesn't want to talk to Teresa. That's an example. Okay. The ellipse can be used in other meanings. I think I talk about that. Sometimes it's used in thought bubbles to show that a character stopped talking. Occasionally it's used for a pause for dramatic effect. And sometimes it's used to show there's more information to come, but it doesn't really change that. So they talk about a type of answer called rap rock for answering questions. This is a bit detailed. And you don't have to use this for every single question, but the first 3 are really pretty important. First, when you're answering a question, restate the question, okay? Then give me your answer, and then prove your answer using some examples or details from the text. If it's asking for, like, if it's a question that's asking for a lot of marks, like, hey, this is worth 10 marks, I would go ahead and do the next parts where it says relate, make connections to yourself, give your opinion about what's happening, and then maybe conclude it and wrap it up with a good heading. Again, you don't have to do this for every single question. And for some reason, they, in the book, I don't know why they did this, they didn't actually even do it. They only did the first 3. So I'm showing you the first 3, and then I'm showing you what the other ones would sound like, okay? Um, Restate. Jimmy is upset at the airport because, here's my answer. He hears they've started going through everybody's luggage and people. He feels this is an invasion of privacy because he does not have anything illegal on him. Now, I wouldn't actually put the word restate and answer in my answer. I'm just doing that right now so you could see it. Prove. Jimmy says, no bloody way they're searching my body. I just left juvie 4 hours ago. How could I have anything on me? Relate. I always hate when they search my bags as it makes me feel guilty even when I haven't done anything. Opinion. I don't think they should really do that as it assumes you're a criminal. Conclude. I think Jimmy has a right to be upset and suspicious about this. By the way, I don't know if you're anywhere out in radio land or Zoom land, if you're hearing, there's kind of this rumbling noise in the background. They're doing street work in the background. I can't really siphon off that noise because we're right on the street. My apologies. There's not much I can do about it. Okay, so this is how the new version looks. It's basically the same. It's not really any different. So here are the questions to think about as you are reading chapter 1. Okay. In last year's version, it shows up on page 29. In this year's version, it begins on page 25. Where did Jimmy spend the last 18 months of his life? Why was he there? Okay. And then you would answer it in a full sentence. Jimmy spent the last 18 months in, where'd he go? Because what did he do? Number 2, how does Jimmy feel about being home? Use clues from the text to answer this. In other words, look in the book. It talks about his feelings. What does it say? Number 3, pretend that a friend has asked you what this book is about and what Jimmy is like. Write a message to your friend giving your opinion, like what you think or feel about Jimmy, the situation he's in, and any interesting comments you may like to share with your friend. And the purpose here is to get your friend to read the book so that both of you can discuss it. Again, you're pretending. Remember that when you're making your opinion, you often start with phrases like I think, I feel, I believe, in my opinion. To answer this, think about what do you think about Jimmy as a person and what do you think about the situation he's in? You'll probably need to finish the whole chapter before you're able to answer this particular question. Okay, question number 4. Again, you'll have to kind of go through the whole chapter and then kind of look back at this question. As you were reading the text, was there a point where you paused to think about something in your own life or something you've read or watched before? Pick only 2 of these prompts, not all 4, just 2. And these are making connections to your own life and explain the connections you made using full sentences. Okay. I think I changed the marks for this. Check and see. If it's 2, then you need 2 sentences. If it's 4, please write me 4 sentences. Okay. Right. Okay, we talked about this. We connect by thinking about similar events like going through a divorce, leaving home, starting college. We can connect by thinking about similar emotions, similar situations. Even if a character has done something we haven't, like commit a murder or something, sometimes we can help ourselves understand their actions by thinking about times we got mad or we lost control or we felt betrayed. So remember that you don't have to have had it exactly what happened to you to make a connection. Number 5, complete the following phrases as best as you can based on your predictions that we did in assignment 6 and your thoughts and ideas about reading the text. Now, this is the one question I really changed from last year's course. There was a set of questions that was kind of like this, but it was really confusing. And I don't think people knew for sure what it was asking because I got a lot of answers that were a bit kind of mixed up kind of. So hopefully this is easier to understand. First of all, one of your original predictions was, tell me what your prediction was in assignment 6. This is why I'm saying you have to make sure you did a prediction. Then, was your prediction right or was it wrong? Circle 1, because what actually happened in the chapter was, and then tell me what actually happened in the chapter instead of your prediction. My new prediction for chapter 2, looking forward, what do you think is going to happen in the next chapter? Tell me. And what makes you think that? Like, what are the words or actions that Jimmy or other characters did that give you ideas for your new prediction? Okay. And then number 6 says, let's visualize or try to picture what Jimmy's world looks like. Draw 4 pictures in the spaces on the next page, or you can use your own blank paper in order to illustrate 4 major events. Now, every now and again, I get people calling me and they're a bit panicked because they're like, I can't draw. Don't worry about it. I'm not looking at your drawing. I'm not marking your artwork. I'm just trying to see your ideas and that you understood the main events. It can totally just be stick figures. As long as I can tell what's happening, that's all I'm looking for, okay? And the reason we're talking about this is because visualization is a really powerful reading strategy, okay? And some people do it automatically. They just, the moment they're reading, it's like a little movie's going off in their head. But that isn't true for everybody. Some people have to kind of stop and deliberately try and imagine what things might look like. And sometimes this might change depending on what book you're reading, right? I'm not very familiar with the British game of cricket. So if I was reading a chapter about how to play cricket and there was a bunch of new vocabulary and a bunch of action about what was going on, I would probably have to stop and really think about what each person is doing and how that playing field looks in order to have a better understanding of the game. But if I was reading about hockey, I've seen plenty of hockey. I would just picture that one automatically. So a lot of times our pictures are going to depend a little bit on whether we've seen or been a part of or understand that activity. The thing is, if you're having trouble picturing, taking the time to picture things is often a huge help in understanding what's going on. So it's a really valuable strategy if you're willing to take the time to do it, right? Okay, so in your book, you've got something like this. And what are the four main events? Put one event in each corner. Here is an example. Here, sorry, I drew kind of badly. So here's our really ugly plane, and here's my propellers, and there's Jimmy with two eyeballs and no other face. And I've written Jimmy is flying home. And here I drew some water and I tried to draw like a little airport with some houses. And I said Green Lake Community. I think it's Green Star Lake, actually, right? Okay, so that's what's going on. So then I would draw a bunch more drawings. Okay. What do I need this for? What is an inference? An inference is a conclusion based on evidence and reasoning. Um, oh, okay. All right, this is the one I took away. This is from the original. If you still have it, you are welcome to finish it. What happened was, for some reason, this got created as kind of like one big paragraph, and it was a bit confusing. We've talked about how to make inferences and read between the lines already. Based on what you've just read, I now realize what are some things you understand about Jimmy or the events based on the first chapter? What are some clues or things that happened that support your idea? What's your new idea? And why do you think that? This is kind of the same thing I did, but they just kind of explained it, I think, a little bit confusingly. Gosh, that whatever machine that is very, very loud. I apologize. Okay. This is a reading log. Um, depending on which version you have, it's on different pages. I think in the new version, it's on page 33. I would strongly suggest that you make several copies of this page because you need to hand it in at the end for your portfolio. Okay. It doesn't get you marks. You don't need to hand it in each time you finish one. Wait and hand it all in the very last lesson with the rest of your portfolio. And it's basically just a way to become more aware of what you're reading in this course and at work and at home. And we'll talk about more of this a little bit, but I do want to kind of get this in before we go. Tell me what day you read it. Tell me what type of text it is, a magazine, a Facebook blog, or a Facebook message. Who wrote it or the author, um, the length of time, or the number of pages read. Sometimes it's easy to say, oh, that was one page, or sometimes it's easier to say, well, it was a bunch of pages, but I skipped around and it was like 5 minutes. I don't know. And here, main idea or comment, what was I reading about? It was a fall fashion article. And in the book, whenever you see this little purple book guy, it's just a reminder, hey, remember to be filling in your reading log. And then you can just sit down and take a few minutes and think, oh, what did I read today or yesterday or some of the other days? Because this is something that you hand in, okay? Tomorrow, we are going to look at assignment number 8. Assignment number 8 is still about chapter 1. So if you haven't finished reading chapter 1, I would say try and finish assignment number 6 and 7 tonight, and then read it so we can kind of talk about things tomorrow. This is assignment that is the same in both the original and the new one, so nothing changes. Okay, that is the end. I don't think I have anybody in my thing. Hang on a second. Oh, sorry. Nope, just me. All right. If you're ever on and you need to ask questions, just let me know. I will talk to you tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday, and we'll look at assignment number 8. Thank you so much for coming out. And where is